The Sunken Flying Fortress. There are a lot of creepy plane wrecks sitting at the bottom of the ocean, but there's something undeniably surreal and eerie about the B17 Flying Fortress. This particular bomber is sitting at the bottom of the sea off the coast of France, and it's more of a tourist attraction now for divers than a war machine. However, the Flying Fortress in its prime had 4 working engines and 13 machine guns. It was one of the favorite bombers used by the Americans, and the one we're looking at today is just one out of 4,750 lost during the war. This airplane took off on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, 1944, with 10 men on board. They were on their way to bomb a railway system in Italy, but unfortunately met a squadron of 109 German planes on their way. The airplane was damaged, it lost its guns, and it only had 2 engines running. It was eventually forced to land at sea, where 6 of the original 10 crew members were rescued, and the Flying Fortress drifted to the bottom of the water, where it has rested ever since. The sunken B-17 is not overtly horrifying, but there is something kinda creepy about looking at this dead machine of war resting in the sand of the ocean, now home to fish and stingray. It's a great place to go diving if you're into creepy wreckage. Underwater cave skeletons. Nothing is creepier than skeletons. Inside of an underwater cave 100 feet below the surface of the water, divers have made a stunning discovery. They found the oldest complete human skeleton in the Americas. The skeleton dated back 13,000 years and belonged to a teenage girl from the last ice age. The skeleton was discovered inside of an already creepy cave in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. According to National Geographic, a team of researchers were mapping roughly 100,000 feet of underwater passages when they stumbled upon an abyss literally littered with bones. But these weren't just any bones, they were the remains of prehistoric beasts. The divers found bones belonging to saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and something called a gomphothere, which was an animal kind of like a mastodon. It was truly the discovery of a lifetime, and then they found the bones of a human. The teenage girl whose skeleton they found would have lived inside the cave system before it was flooded with water. The researchers have named her Naya, after the water nymphs from Greek mythology. After doing some DNA testing using the girl's teeth, researchers discovered that her DNA matched perfectly with that of modern Native Americans. This suggests that she was part of the earliest group of people who migrated out of Siberia and into North America. This is both a creepy discovery and an amazing historical find. The Queen Anne's Revenge. The Queen Anne's Revenge is probably the most famous pirate ship in the entire world. It was the flagship of a certain guy named Edward Teach, who you might better know as Blackbeard. The ship operated during the golden age of piracy and was originally a French slave ship before she was captured near Martinique in 1717 and renamed by the pirate Blackbeard. However, Blackbeard only terrorized the seven seas for around 6 months before he eventually ran the ship aground in 1718, and since then it has remained lost under the water somewhere in North Carolina. But in 1996, the shipwreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge was discovered, and since 1996, archaeologists have been scrambling to explore and document as much as they can about this legendary boat. Even though it's been over 20 years, the wreckage still has not been recovered, and the priceless artifacts contained therein are still lost. This is a little strange considering it's only 25 feet underwater and not even a mile and a half from the shore. It should be easy to salvage, but it has not been salvaged. It's still sitting underwater, and it is still a pretty creepy sight to behold. It's not the octopuses living inside the ship that are creepy or its corroded cannons. It's the ghost of Blackbeard and his crew and the long list of atrocities that took place on the French slave trader in the 1700s that make it such a disturbing thing to look at. The fact that it's shrouded in murky darkness at the bottom of the ocean only makes it that much creepier. And now that I think about it, maybe it's better that this particular vessel remains sleeping with the fishes. A Romanian Village. If you were to search for flooded towns, you would find a very long list of them. There are all kinds of towns that for one reason or another were flooded and still remain underwater, sometimes with nothing but a church steeple sticking out for tourists to come and snap photos of. But in Romania, there is something far creepier than just a submerged church. The village of Giamana was once a thriving settlement sitting in a picturesque Romanian valley. However, it was wiped off the map in 1978 to make room for not just a lake, but a toxic dump puddle. What happened here was that copper was found nearby, and the mining that ensued brought huge amounts of toxic waste that needed to be disposed of. At the time, the lovely dictator of Romania was still in power, Mr. Nicolae Ceausescu, and so he ordered that the village be emptied and the entire valley be flooded with toxic waste. Once everyone was gone and the valley was empty, the dictator began to literally pour gallon after gallon of poisonous waste into the valley, turning the once peaceful village into a giant puddle of toxic sludge. Today, all that remains of this peaceful village are a few lonely rooftops and the steeple of the local church. And no, this is not the kind of place you want to go diving to check out the ruins of the creepy village. You might come out on the other side with 3 or maybe 4 eyeballs. Mermaid playing piano. A mermaid playing the piano does not sound inherently creepy. It actually sounds a little romantic, but if you were to dive off the coast of the Bahamas and stumble upon the lazy mermaid lounging by her grand piano, you might be a little disturbed. It's definitely creepier than you might imagine, and it loses all its romanticism the moment you lay eyes on the freaky mermaid and her slowly decaying piano. But you might be wondering why there's a mermaid playing the piano under the water in the Bahamas. It all comes down to the fact that you can actually buy your own island here, and one of the lunatics who purchased their very own island is the famous illusionist David Copperfield. As if buying his own island was not weird enough, he had sculptures commissioned and then sank in about 15 feet of water near his island. Since then, the place has become a really popular destination for snorkeling, and while once you break the surface and look around you can see how beautiful the surroundings are, it's still creepy to bump into unusual sculptures like these sitting at the bottom of the sea. New Jersey's lost locomotives. Believe it or not, one of the creepiest places you can visit right now is off the coast of New Jersey. It's a train graveyard that was discovered a few years back by archaeologists. Not only is this place creepy with its abandoned locomotives, but it's also a complete mystery as to when and how the steam engines were sunk. Experts believe they came from the 1850s, and the report from the Daily Mail claims that they are still sitting 90 feet under the water. The best explanation that archaeologists could come up with is that the engines were somehow lost in a violent storm 5 miles from the coast of New Jersey when they were being transported across the Atlantic. However, why there are no records of these locomotives being lost is a mystery, and to be quite honest, the whole situation is a little weird. After being underwater for 160 years, the locomotives are in surprisingly good shape. They almost look like they're still trying to race across the bottom of the ocean. It's definitely a creepy and kind of surreal experience to be swimming with ancient locomotives. The New Jersey Museum of Transportation has begun efforts to figure out what exactly should be done with the old vehicles, which by the way are Planet Class 222T models, very similar to the original Pioneer steam locomotive. Even when these things were made 160 years ago, they were already out of date. Kamikaze dolphins from North Korea. It's hard to say if this next discovery is creepy, insane, or just plain ridiculous. Popular Mechanics has reported that satellite images of a river in the country of North Korea have revealed that the nation is keeping a population of dolphins, and experts believe they are likely for military purposes. Now you might be wondering what exactly a country like North Korea would be doing with military dolphins, and it's very likely that their military is training the dolphins to carry out attacks on an enemy ship in a time of war. The location of the dolphins was first spotted by the United States Naval Institute News' H.I. Sutton. The location was initially found to have 2 circular pens, but within just a few years they have added 3 more pens, and this has led experts to believe that they are acquiring more and more dolphins for military reasons. Dolphins in the military are nothing new. The United States Navy has used dolphins to tag underwater mines and to rescue divers and detect saboteurs, but it's believed that the North Koreans are using their dolphins for much more menacing means. It could very well be that the North Koreans are creating kamikaze dolphins. This would mean that a dolphin could be equipped with some kind of explosive device, which the animal would then use to attack and destroy a vessel while destroying itself in the process. However, as of right now, the truth of the North Korean dolphins is unknown. Much of this is just speculation and educated guessing. Hopefully, we never know for sure if they are truly training evil kamikaze dolphins in North Korea, and if they are, hopefully they never use them. Medieval soldier. At the bottom of a lake in Lithuania, a gruesome and creepy discovery has been made. For over 500 years, a medieval soldier has been rotting away at the bottom of this lake, half hidden underneath the mud with his weapons of war still surrounding him. The skeleton was discovered just recently during an underwater investigation of an old bridge in the east of the country at Lake Asveja. Suffice to say, this was not something that the investigators had expected to find. According to a researcher with Klaipeda University, the skeleton was not actually buried even though it was discovered under a significant amount of sand. Instead, it's believed that he likely fell into the water while trying to cross a bridge that had spanned the lake in the 16th or 17th century. In those days, the bridge led over the lake to Dubinji Castle, which sat on a hilltop just over the lake. It's unsure what exactly caused the guy to fall off the bridge. He could have been a knight leaving the castle, maybe a guy who drank too much mead and lost his balance. It could have been an ancient murder. We just don't know at this point. Nonetheless, it definitely freaked out the workmen who had been trying to investigate the shape of the bridge. Port Royal. A lot of people are not familiar with Port Royal, Jamaica. Back in the 1600s, it was referred to as the wickedest city on Earth. It was like Las Vegas in the 60s and 70s, except with a lot more violence, destruction, and heathenism. But in 1692, Port Royal was destroyed by an earthquake and most of the town was swallowed by the sea. Today it's nothing but a small fishing village, but the true remains of this disturbing place are just off the shore, submerged under a bit of water. The remnants of the city were not properly discovered again until the 1960s, and since then, there have been all kinds of creepy discoveries being made in this once horrifying city of sin. From tobacco pipes to corked wine bottles, there are countless artifacts lost in the ruins of Port Royal. But the creepiest thing of all is just to see the destroyed city in the blackness of the deep and to envision all the wretched things that happened there. The Neptune Memorial Reef. The Neptune Memorial Reef is literally a city of the dead. This terrifying underwater graveyard is located just a few miles from the coast of Florida and about 40 feet beneath the surface of the ocean. And yes, it is very much a real city. It has stone roads, towering gates, and imposing ruins. While this place was never technically discovered, there have undoubtedly been one or two rather surprised divers who happened upon the underwater burial ground completely by accident, and that would be alarming. You can actually pay money to be buried inside this graveyard. Cremated remains are placed inside of concrete memorials and then sunk into the underwater necropolis. Your loved ones can then come and visit you, albeit with a scuba suit on. While there are not enough ghost stories to scare away visitors, it's certainly a place with a creepy atmosphere, and you might find yourself freaked out as you swim down the narrow corridors and behold the strange architecture and bronze statues of the memorials. One of the more famous residents of the underwater city is a man named Bert Kilbride, who had once been listed as the oldest living scuba diver by the Guinness Book of World Records. He actually has a place of high honor at the Neptune Memorial Reef. Bert is currently interred at the top of one of the entry columns that you will find at the gates of the necropolis. How do you feel about these creepy discoveries? Let me know your feelings in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and come back soon for another awesome video. If you were invited on a submarine mission to deep dive 10,000 feet, would you do it, or would you be too scared?